All right, we're going to get going, folks. So just so you're aware, my name is Jennifer Page. I am the project manager for the Moose project. And tonight I am on my own, but I also want to acknowledge that Jamie Beal is an interdisciplinary instruction specialist with the Maine Department of Education. She is also a former Moose team leader, and she is going to be the one that's going to help to really run the pilot program this year and be your point of contact for all questions after we get you into the program. So I just wanted to acknowledge all of her help. I'm very, very grateful for having her a part of this program. So the plan for tonight is to give you kind of an overview of Moose really quickly, and then get into what the requirements are for running the pilot program, and then the compensation, expectations, things like that, and come up with kind of who your point people are at various stages in the game, and then open it up for questions if anybody has any. So to start off with, let's look at what Moose actually is. So this, even if you've seen Moose before, this may actually be a new view for you. Over the summer, we finally got our new user interface. And so Moose is a student-facing online open source education platform with modules that have been developed by Maine educators for Maine students. And we're really proud of kind of the new design and accessibility. There's been a lot of work that's gone into it, and a ton of work that's gone into the Moose platform in general to get these modules up and running so that they could be used in your classroom. Even though these were started as a pandemic response, really we have shifted away from being a pandemic response and the idea of like sustaining education at home to being able to be used as really great resources for your classroom in general. And so whether it is a snow day or a sub, or you're talking about having resources where you're using the module with your students throughout an entire classroom doing the same module or multiple modules in the same class, Moose really is a resource that we hope can help you out. And that's why we're really excited about you being able to pilot these modules and give us feedback so that we can continue to improve this resource for all Maine teachers and students. In the modules themselves, we have pre-K all the way up to 12 in terms of grade range that these would be found for. We have them under different learning progressions. And so this month we're featuring the data science learning progression, and then we'll feature some of the other learning progressions. And that idea is those topics are ones that have been requested and identified by Maine teachers as areas of need for support. So we're excited to kind of have those learning progressions available. All of the modules in the platform are free and open source, and so you really can choose whatever works best for you and your students. When you get into the module, the interface is kind of like a book. There's a little bit of scrolling that can go on, but really you can go through the different pages of the module pretty easily. There are terms that help with identifying glossary type words for students. The idea is to try to make this as accessible as possible in a really kind of user-friendly package. The modules themselves are intended to be interdisciplinary and project-based, as well as adhere to principles for universal design for learning, which is trying to make modules as accessible as possible for all students, rather than from the get-go, rather than trying to reverse engineer those elements into the modules. We really do have a focus on social emotional learning and trauma-informed learning. And then the last piece, and definitely not the least piece, of trying to make these as equitable and inclusive as possible so that our students really can see themselves in the modules and the work that they are going to do. So that's Moose in a nutshell. And really to figure out whether or not Moose modules will work for you in your classroom at this time, the ask would be that you go onto the Moose platform and play around and find whether or not something is going to work for your class or not. But in terms of the program, once you've identified that, okay, yes, I do want to pilot a module, we ask that you apply. It is not a stringent, like really harsh application process. The intent is just to make sure that you have identified a module to start off with, know how it's going to fit into your plan for the year, and then let us know what that is so that we're starting off on that footing. If something ends up having to change, Once you've applied, we can talk through that about whether or not that works, but no matter what, we want you to have had that kind of contact with the platform to start off with, and identify what you're planning on doing. You can apply for 2 modules for this round and get paid for each one of them, and we'll get into that compensation in a minute. But for each one of them, we would be asking you to be done with all of the elements by January 12th. And that includes the pilot application, which is due October 8th, and that's what you do to start everything off. We give you kind of a pre-implementation orientation session. So just kind of reiterating, this is the type of stuff that we're expecting. Here's how you can expect communication to and from us. Here's where you go to get answers for questions, all of that sort of stuff. You'd implement the modules in your classroom. We're asking for 5 or more students. If you have a special circumstance and you really think that you could get us some good feedback with less students or a different scenario, please reach out and talk to me. I'm happy to kind of see what we can do. But with implementing those 1 or 2 modules in your classroom, you get to choose what the modules are and how they're delivered. So you can do it as a hybrid approach. You can do it as a fully remote approach that you give it to students and they're doing it outside the classroom. Or you can do it completely in the classroom, where you're really helping to enrich their experience by leading them through these elements together. So entirely up to you. We love it when you're able to infuse the modules with other elements from your classroom and from your work. So part of that is what's helping us learn how to improve these modules for other people. So those types of things, how it went, what things you may have added or not done as part of the module because it didn't make sense to do it in your class, whatever it may be, that's part of what will go into your learning narrative at the end that kind of tells us, how did everything go? What can we learn? Give us some actionable feedback. And that is really what we're asking of you with these module pilots is how can we get better? And we're not going to get better unless we actually get the feedback from people who are using it on the ground in your classroom. So the only other thing at the very end that we'd be asking is that you would commit to kind of coming to a conversation rather than doing an individual interview like we did last year. We're going to gather groups of teachers together to kind of have a discussion about how things went in their classroom, because we think that people feeding off of each other is going to kind of bring out a different feel of how things went and maybe highlight different things that wouldn't come up in isolation in your narrative or on your own in an interview. So committing to one of those, there'll be multiple sessions you can choose from. They'll be targeted for certain grade ranges, but anybody can attend any of them. So if you can only go to one that's like you're a pre-K teacher and you can only go to a 12th grade, a 9 through 12 session, that's totally fine. Worst case scenario, we will work with you to get that narrative some other way. But those are the things that you're committing to and committing to communicating with us about. The other elements that are optional is that we would love to see what students are actually creating and how the students are reacting. And these things are part of what the students will actually do no matter what in the modules themselves. There's going to be a lot of self-reflection that they're going to do, and they're going to create a project of some kind. And so we're not asking the students to do anything different. What we're asking is that if you would like to get paid for this kind of extra piece, then we would really want you to provide de-identified student work and de-identified student reflections. So you're doing the work for us of taking their identity off of it and submitting to us kind of those elements so that we have them. We don't have to worry about FERPA or anything like that. It just allows us to see what's coming up. And then these can actually also be resources for other teachers and possibly other students to be able to see, what does the work for this module look like? There will be a teacher portal that we're creating by the end of the year, and that's where these materials could be housed. So they wouldn't be available to the open public, but they would be available to any main teacher that has signed up with an account. So with all of that, the required and optional elements, compensation wise, we're looking at up to $600 per module. and you can pilot 2 of them. So in total, if you did everything, then we're looking at $1,200 total for this round. We will also plan on doing another round in the spring, but again, this would be for anything you finish between now and January 12th. January 12th is a hard cutoff date. And so if things are not turned in by that point or are not wrapped up, you could apply them to the second round in the spring. But we wouldn't be able to pay you for anything that isn't actually fully done. So that really is why January 12th is so critical for getting all those elements in, because we have to submit everybody's payment at once. So per module, $500 for completing all those elements to give us the feedback, piloting it, giving us the feedback in the narrative form, in the discussion form, and then $50 each for a pack of de-identified student project work, a pack of de-identified student reflections. And lather, rinse, repeat for a second module if you're interested or able to do that. We would want you to submit this pilot plan, communicate early and often. We wouldn't be hounding you asking for the work. If you submit stuff by January 12th, you'll get paid. If not, then you will not get paid. And so there will be a few reminders that we'll send out. But other than that, we're not chasing after you for these things. We're expecting that if you really do want to get paid for these things, that you're putting in the initiative. And this is just also a factor of our capacity. So once you sign up, it'll be up to you to kind of be the driving force behind all of that. So again, January 12th, magic date. Submit everything, get everything done by that point, and you'll be good to go. So until you get accepted into the program, I am your point of contact. So Jennifer Page or jennifer.page@maine.gov. Please reach out with anything. Once you get into the program and the program gets running, Jamie Beal, like I said, is going to be your point of contact for any main questions and things like that that are going to come up. She's going to help to run the discussion format. She is a former MOOSE team leader, and so is very familiar with the MOOSE environment platform, working with teachers and students with all of it. So you're in very good hands, and I'm certainly not going anywhere in terms of being available for additional support as needed. And Jamie will also be able to reach out to the other team leaders, MOOSE team leaders that are working right now, especially including Brianne Lolar, who is our Wabanaki Studies specialist and MOOSE team leader. And so she is the one that has helped to create the Wabanaki Studies modules with members of the Wabanaki Confederacy and the other teachers that have worked with her over this past year. So with all of that, Bree is really the best suited to answer a lot of the questions that may come up specifically on the Wabanaki modules in relation to the content and their implementation. And so she will be a resource for anybody that is implementing Wabanaki Studies modules this year under this program. So with that, that is our our session for tonight. You can come off mute, put your questions in the chat, and if there's anything else that you need, then feel free to reach out. Again, jennifer.page@maine.gov, and I look forward to talking with you and hopefully seeing your application come in. So with that, we will call it good.